Welcome to the April 13th, 2020 Education Committee and supplementary regular board meeting of the Lower Merion Board of School Directors. My name is Melissa Gilbert and I'm the president of the board. I'm going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and you can please join me at home. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Okay. So, everyone, this meeting is obviously not being held in the regular board meeting. In consideration of Governor Wolf's COVID-19 disaster proclamation and the imposition of a stay-at-home order throughout Pennsylvania, and out of concern for the health and safety of our school community, the Lower Merion Board of School Directors have convened this evening's regularly scheduled meeting using a live web-based video streaming platform. This decision was made in consultation with other Montgomery County school districts and with due consideration for meeting integrity and security. So we are streaming live via Zoom, and to ensure there are no disruptions, all participants will be muted. The agenda can also be found on board docs. This meeting is being recorded and will be accessible on the district's website and cable channel no later than Thursday, April 16th, 2020, to allow those members of the public who cannot participate to view the proceedings at a later time. The board thanks the public in advance for its cooperation. We want to make sure that we can receive public comment, so directions to be able to access the meeting and to make public comment regarding the agenda and school affairs were posted on the Lower Merion School District website and in board docs. And comments are being accepted up until 8:15 p.m. this evening at the email address boardpubliccomment, that's one word, boardpubliccomment@lmsd.org. Public comments not read will be posted to the agenda the following day. No live comments will be taken and all participants will be muted. Comments received in the email box after 8:15 p.m. this evening will either be addressed during tonight's meeting, depending on the volume of emails, or the emails will be compiled and addressed at or before the next meeting. We ask that emails include the citizen's name and address in order to be included as part of the meeting's public record. Please note that all comments, including identification of the citizen, will be read aloud, subject to the time limit set forth in board policy. Any objections pursuant to the Sunshine Act may also be emailed to the board public comment at lmsd.org address during this meeting. Again, that's board public comment, one word, no S at the end. Before we get started, I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the incredible work of our school district with the leadership of Superintendent Copeland to ensure the best possible educational opportunities for our students during this crisis when our schools were so suddenly dismissed back on March 13th. From teachers creating sort of I miss you videos to students, to nutritional services staff preparing more than 9,800 meals, to our nurses and instructional aides who really took it upon themselves to deliver some of those meals, to our instructional support staff who have answered lots of help desk tickets, and most importantly, hours and hours that teachers and everyone have spent mastering new technology, often while caring for their own children. I also want to acknowledge how challenging this has been for many of our families and caregivers. We appreciate all of your support as we try our best to provide educational opportunities for all of our students. I know many people are struggling, and I encourage you to contact your school counselors or teachers or administrators if you need any assistance while we continue to provide instruction remotely. And I'm now going to turn to Mr. Copeland to begin tonight's presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. Thank you for your words of appreciation and support. I'd like to echo those words. It's an incredible from our central office administrators, many of whom are here this evening, to our classroom teachers, instructional assistants, guidance counselors, have really pulled together. This is not, as anybody knows, been easy for anyone. The one sliver, well, there's a couple of slivers of silver lining, but one of them is clearly that the community is the Lower Merion community, and they've come together at this time. And so congratulations to all of you. And thank you for your patience. We know this hasn't been easy, as Dr. Gilbert said, for those of you at home either. Our teachers are working round the clock on trying to provide quality education. And in some cases, it's not coming as fast as we would like, as fast as they would like. But we're working on it. To that end, we had a professional development day scheduled for April 28th. Not sure if we're going to keep that day, but we do want to open another day, April 20th, and give our teachers an opportunity, once they've had a couple of weeks of synchronous and asynchronous instruction under their belt, to say, well, how can we do it better? We gave what's called a pulse survey to our instructional staff last Friday, after 1 week of full both synchronous and asynchronous. And so, what do you need? What are some of the concerns you have? They gave a lot of support, but they also said, here are the things that we need. Want to take the information that they gave us and turn it into professional development to better suit the needs of parents and families. And so we're going to take the 20th. Right now, we're still compiling the results and planning the staff development. That's why we're not doing it until the 20th. And we'll be getting back to folks directly as we go. So that's where we are. We're not where we want to be, but we're working diligently to get better at this terrible situation. Dr. Gilbert said March 13th. It didn't hit me until just then that today is April 13th, and it's that fast that this situation occurred, and we've been under this cloud, but working through it. So with that, let me turn it over to Scott Everslide. Dr. Everslide is our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum. He and Jen Gadaucio and all of the other people whose pictures you see in between the Lower Merion emblems there have been working hard at putting together as good a program as we can. And I'd like them to share with you where we are and some directions in terms of where we hope to go. So, Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Copeland. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to share my screen so the presentation can be viewable as we talk through our program. Just bear with me for one moment. So thank you. So we, in our instructional program, we've been using the terms flexible instructional days. And that term may sound familiar to our parents and teachers. And we didn't coin that phrase. That actually is terminology that's from the state that went into effect last summer, actually, when the state first debuted a program for an alternative for districts to consider during snow days. Was a program they call Flexible Instructional Days. The program was very ambitious and required districts in Pennsylvania in a very short amount of time. It was actually debuted in August with a deadline of reporting and submitting the plan by September 1. So we didn't have much time, and there were very few districts across Pennsylvania that actually pursued that. But nevertheless, it actually provided a framework, unbeknownst to us at the time and others at the time, that would provide some guidance for what expectations could be in the event of a school closing. So we're going to give you an update on where we are as a district with this. Just some background information, as was previously shared, due to COVID-19, Governor Wolf ordered a 2-week shutdown from schools initially on March 13th. I think we can all recall the suddenness of that and just the quick escalation of this, both locally and and nationwide. And then during that window of time, during that closure, there was evolving guidance that began to trickle out from the Pennsylvania Department of Education of what school districts should be doing during that time. That guidance is still coming. So literally by the day, we're getting additional information that's being funneled through the MCIU and the IU we've been working closely with, just to try to help provide a framework for some of the guidance of our program. We haven't always had the benefit of having that guidance. We had to make some decisions about our program absent that guidance and use the best judgment that we could at the time. And I'll take you through a little bit of that timeline. Prior to the closure, though, in late February, Mr. Copeland had brought together a team that began meeting weekly that include our nursing staff and our programming operations, just to think a little bit about what a potential closure could look like. We knew that there was information that was coming. The news, we weren't sure what the scope of it would be, but he tasked the curriculum teams to plan for a potential 10-day shutdown and say, what would instructional activities for students look like in the event of a 10-day closure? That preparation proved to be very helpful. We, in the week of March 9th, things began ramping up. March 10th, we actually had a closing for school because of a mass cleaning, because of information of a possible exposure risk, but nothing at that time. No confirmed cases. And then we returned on Wednesday, the 11th, and actually had planned for an afternoon on Thursday, the 12th, and the day of March, and the afternoon of March 13th for professional learning for our staff to help prep for what looked to be like a closure coming soon. And it certainly came sooner than we had hoped. So the closure actually came prior to us getting that information. So we never had that opportunity to pull our staff together and really kind of have them be really immersed in planning. So the closure came out that day for the 13th to the 27th. And during that first 10-day closure, the Department of Education granted districts those 10 days basically for very general guidance about enrichment and review, maintenance of previously learned skills, but the design was not for the new learning of material, and students were not going to be held accountable for that. And this actual guidance was not out the first day. So when we first closed, we initially went into our kind of previous mindset of our planning, saying, all right, we had planned for a 10-day closure. Let's transition to that. Also during those 10 days, we wanted to aggressively target meeting the needs of our families, including security of meals, and our food services acted quickly to begin distribution of meals very soon into the closure, as well as assessing what the needs for devices and connectivity were from our students. So those first days, we were calling families, we were reaching out to families, we had put out a survey, we sent a robocall to all families and asked them to call a particular number if they had a device need. So we were trying to, by any means possible, trying to assess that information. Those were some of the activities that we had planned for some of our staff the afternoon of the closure that we did not get to actually have. And then during those 10 days, we also devoted a lot of time to ensuring that we were being thoughtful of how we were going to meet the needs of all of our students, including our students with IEPs, to ensure that all students had a free and appropriate public education. That's something that we've always valued, certainly wanted to maintain during the closure. And then during that time, we also wanted to be better at what we knew was coming, and that's remote learning. And we started that during those first 10 days. That has been ongoing and rapidly changing. We are continuing to do that literally on a daily basis. There are new resources that are being shared. And then, of course, we knew that the governor extended the closure indefinitely, and then ultimately for the remainder of the year. So after March 30th, well, I should say just prior to March 30th, there was a little bit more additional clarification of the expectations for districts during the closure. And those expectations went into effect on March 30th. Now, we had already had some instructional activities prior to March 30th, but there was no obligation to have done so from the Pennsylvania Department of Education. So some districts, many districts, in fact, during that first 10 days they got some of their staff preparation, but as far as delivery to students, they hadn't delivered any type of instruction. The state has called this time period continuity of education, which means that we're to provide educational practices that occur for a prolonged closure. There's supposed to be opportunities for kids to maintain and develop skills, while away from their traditional school environment. And there were two options that the state has provided for how school districts could pursue continuity of education. The option that we chose was planned instruction, which is basically formal teaching, similar to what occurs to the extent possible in the classroom setting, where there's new learning, there's new concepts and new skills. It would be the essence of trying to maintain our program, what you're seeing now, trying to maintain our program in this non-traditional remote setting. So students, if you had planned instruction, could still receive grade and credit. They obviously had to attend and be engaged and so forth with course requirements. The alternative choice that we chose not to pursue is called enrichment and review. And that was basically if the district chose to just say, we are going to provide review of previously learned skills. There's no new content. The student's not responsible for anything moving forward, just kind of reinforcement of previously learned skills. So after deliberation, and we opted for the planned instruction. As I mentioned through those first 10 days, about a focus on providing free and appropriate public education for our special education students. Ms. Frazier and her team were diligently working to help think about what that programming could look like. She's going to speak briefly about what that looked like from her department's perspective.
Thank you. So prior to March 30th, when the focus was on review and practice of learned skills, we were responsible for and focusing on ensuring access for students with disabilities. So we were looking at what accommodations can we provide in this virtual instruction, what modifications can we provide to ensure that the students with disabilities were still able to access that. There was a lot of collaboration happening between the curriculum department and the special education and student services supervisors to really make sure that we had work that was able to be accessed by all students. Once we shifted to that continuity of education, that's when our FAPE obligation began, and that's requiring us to provide that appropriate public education to the best of our ability. That is going to look very different for every student with a disability because they have individualized needs. What we have to really focus on is providing FAPE to the very best of our ability, but recognizing that it will look different under these extreme and unique circumstances. Direct services are being provided through the special education department. Our related services such as speech therapy, occupational therapy, vision therapy, those are being provided through a teletherapy model. We were very fortunate to be able to partner with one of our independent contractors that we have a longstanding relationship with, where they were able to set us up on their system for providing teletherapy. So that was definitely a positive collaboration. It allowed us to get services up and running a lot quicker than had we had to build that system ourselves. It's important to keep in mind that when we're providing a free and appropriate public education, it is very individualized. We have over 1,400 students in our district that have IEPs, over 900 students that have 504 plans, and over 1,300 students that have gifted IEPs. So it's a lot of students that require those individualized services that we're really working to try to accommodate to the best of our ability.
Thank you, Ms. Frazier.
Thank you.
This slide speaks to our phases, and this is Lower Merion terminology we shared with how we were going to plan and deliver the phases of instruction. And again, this is all within that window prior to when we were required to deliver any instruction, or prior to us trying to meet, required to have to meet our FAPE expectations. So during this time, we had the closure that was announced again on the 13th. So that following Monday, the 16th and 17th, we informed staff and our families that we were going to begin delivering that following upcoming Wednesday, the 18th. And as you can see from the chart, we in the ninth to 12th grade was just our staff and students were just more prepared for some of the transition to online learning, in part because we have a one-to-one program at the high school. Students had devices, they communicate more regularly with teachers, and so forth. But for K through 8, we had more of a phasing in, where that we had those pre-flexible instructional days initially for the first couple of days. And then on the 18th, we shifted into what we were calling phase 1. And that was prepared work that had been planned by our curriculum team for students, maintenance of skills, not new material. And there were opportunities for teachers to provide office hours for parents and students to check in if they choose to check in synchronously, but there wasn't new instruction that was occurring. And then transition into phase 2, which we currently are all in, but high school students have been in earlier, is an implementation of both asynchronous and synchronous instruction. That's in time, not in time. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. Learning that's led by the teacher, more reliance on technology, and continuation of new skills. And again, we are in phase 2, but by no means are we saying we are where we want to be. This is clearly evolving. We're clearly working through challenges, and we want to be better at this than what we are to support both our teachers and our students in the learning. So, from an equity and access standpoint, there were a couple of things that we focused on to ensure that students have access to the learning needs that they required. Initially, through connectivity, we wanted to assess whether students both had internet access at home and whether they had device access at home. As you might imagine, there are a lot of nuances to device deployment and assessing device access, including when we have families who have multiple students in the district, some at all 3 levels, and maybe not devices for all of them. So there was just a lot of nuances in trying to assess need and prioritize a device deployment. We had our counselors and reach out to individual families at all levels to inquire about their needs, respond to their requests for device access, and also the families that we knew perhaps just had some challenges in the past with access. So it's been a very busy time, and Mr. Frazier will speak to that in just one moment, a little bit about some of the connectivity and programming. But just to give you a sense of some of the numbers and the volume of the requests, we've set up help desk tickets for families and staff through this process. And since the 13th of March, we've had over 2,100 help desk requests that have gone in. That pace is still maintained it's been still pretty consistent. We had 86 requests today alone for help desk tickets. And we have had 598 total devices that have been distributed since the 20th of March. That includes most of them student devices, but also some staff devices and other devices that have been needed for repair. So one of the challenges, as you might imagine, is if the device goes down, there's no on-site repair. So we've been accepting devices to be repaired, getting out replacement devices, and it's certainly kept Mr. Frazier and his team busy. So I'll let Mr. Frazier, if you'd like to speak more to that, I'll turn it over to you.
Certainly. I mean, I think you covered all the really big numbers there, Scott. We are still receiving requests for devices. I believe we received another 19 requests today for student devices. So we're still accepting requests for devices. As Scott mentioned, between students and employees, we've distributed 598. Let's call that 600 devices since the 20th is when we first started distributing devices. And the help desk tickets are certainly keeping us very busy, topping 2,100. So I think Scott did an excellent job encapsulating the work that we've been doing, and it's certainly keeping us busy.
So, thank you, George. And we know this is going to be ongoing. This is not going to be device deployment and then we're done. It's going to be an ongoing challenge throughout this, and we'll continue to try to provide the resources for families to make sure they can access the instructional material and instructional program. The other aspect of our equity and access attempts here are ensuring that we're meeting the emotional needs of our families. And this, as Dr. Gilbert mentioned at the onset, this has been challenging for families. And we have a lot of families that are in unique circumstances in unprecedented times. And it's just been difficult to fully assess how it's impacting our families. But Mr. Marta and his team of counselors, beginning with device and assessing the needs for devices, but it's gone beyond that just to make sure that there are adequate check-ins for families. So, Mr. Marta, if you could just speak to that and how your team is responding to that, I appreciate it.
Sure, and thank you. We kicked off with trying to understand the families that are in most need of devices, and that grew and grew and grew. As we started to make connections with families, we understood other needs. One of the other major issues was internet connection, and through Comcast we were connecting families and giving them the links and the information of how to access that, because we were trying to find out the needs. The counselors were calling families to actually find out their actual needs of the devices, which led into other conversations. One of them was also food and food access. They worked very, very closely with the nurses and the social workers to get some of our neediest families access to food. And I have to give a shout out to a lot of the nurses that actually really assisted with getting the families most in need food, beyond just the deployment of the daily setup that we have in the district. The elementary counselors have been very busy trying to calm the nerves of families, and I think of some children, about what does this mean when school closes and how they should be spending their time. The middle school, particularly all through the high school, this is a new challenge for students to find out how do I really have those executive functioning skills where I can make decisions for myself, when to go online, when I need to do work, when I can take a break. So it's been very challenging. And the counselors are at the hub of answering questions for people on a regular day. So this volume of questions is great. Has been great and very awakening to all of us, because it shows how much support our students and our families need at this time. The elementary counselors have developed a wonderful newsletter that will be going out on a regular basis to help give suggestions to parents and activities for students. Our secondary counselors are working very close with their teams, their PLCs, to find out the students that are maybe not so engaging in their activities with online learning, and actually calling them and making contacts with them so that they engage with us and they continue their learning. The high school is in a unique situation, particularly the senior year, as the senior year is going to be very, very different than any other senior year in past history. So it is true with the college process. A lot of decisions recently have come out. They're not coming out the same way. A lot of extensions have been given by colleges and university. There's a lot of mixed information. Our college access counselors have been actually wonderful in trying to bring in all this information and pass it along to our school counselors as quickly as possible when they hear things and learn things, as well as AP testing is on the minds of a lot of our high school our high school students, where the IB is headed off in a different direction. AP is still scheduled to do testing in a very unique online way. So our counselors are trying to engage with all the learning possible so that they can share that information and do it correctly. There are regular emails going out in the form of newsletters by our counselors about how to stay engaged with the information that's coming out from the colleges, as well as for the junior year. All this would be the major time where juniors would be looking at colleges, investigating them, taking college campus visits, and we're working very hard at collecting resources and giving them availability to virtual tours and information about what's coming out of the colleges and how they're going to run next year for their application pool. A lot of information is flying. A lot of information is coming in. It's overwhelming to everybody, but we're trying to collect it, make sense of it, and then chunk it out in a way that is palatable to a lot of our students. So thank you.
Let me jump in if I can. Thank you, Rich. I met today with Scott Eveslage and the two high school principals. Obviously, one of the groups that we're particularly concerned about are seniors, our high school seniors. As anyone can imagine, missing your senior year of high school is not an easy thing to do, with all the activities and socializing with your friends and proms and so forth and so on. So high school principals are going to be reaching out to HSAs. They've been talking regularly with students and faculty, and we're looking to come up with suggestions about how to make the last few months of their senior year as special as we can. Yeah.
So at this point, I'm going to let Dr. Gaudiosa talk about our elementary program.
So all of the levels K to 12 are engaging in synchronous and asynchronous learning. The synchronous opportunities include those real-time opportunities for teachers and students to be virtually present at the same time. These opportunities are scheduled in advance. Examples of these include Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, Zoom sessions, shared Google Docs. The synchronous sessions are encouraged but not required. These can include morning meetings or classroom meetings, small group instruction, conferencing, and other interactive platforms. Asynchronous learning would be learning that is self-directed, self-paced. Participants are engaging in it on their own time, a time of their choice. Examples here include writing assignments, reading articles, watching videos, Blackboard discussion boards, Google Forms, and Google Docs. All students are receiving asynchronous learning. This may include a pre-recorded lesson, a video, or a learning activity designed by the teacher. Now, the unique challenges in K to 5 compared to 6 to 8 are that these digital structures and resources, including Blackboard as a fully utilized learning management system, online core program resources and practices, and likewise the technology skills related to each of these things have been a much bigger transition for elementary. While we're increasing synchronous opportunities as we move forward, the asynchronous opportunities were much more dependent on in elementary, especially for our youngest learners who are dependent on parents to help them access resources. So the asynchronous opportunities are where the new learning is occurring, as Dr. Eveslage described in our shift to phase 2, where new instruction starts taking place. Much of that will be asynchronous with supportive synchronous opportunities. Now in the elementary program, we had the first 5 days of phase 2, distance learning, right before spring break. And as teachers increased synchronous opportunities and used it for new learning, all levels were using both asynchronous and synchronous. But in K-5 especially, the asynchronous learning challenges were very evident in some of the feedback that we received from parents. At the very beginning of phase 2, the 5 days before spring break, classroom teachers began having classroom meetings or morning meetings, extending to talk about learning activities that had been posted, and the specialists in special areas had started the synchronous sessions. What we found was that many parents were finding that it was very difficult to manage. Some of the feedback from many parents were that for example, multiple students with limited devices, or younger students dependent on the parents to navigate access, or multiple synchronous sessions that may have overlapped. So principals and building teams have been working on refining these schedules. So we're trying to make sure that families are not overwhelmed by synchronous opportunities. However, with the idea of continuation of instruction, we want to make sure there are plenty of opportunities for students. So families can structure a day. The teachers are focused on trying to make sure there is adequate challenge, adequate instructional resources so that a student day could be designed. However, what we're recognizing is that parents have had certainly a lot of challenges in the home, both with their own workplace challenges, the closure, and also now trying to support their students as learners. So this is a sample elementary day. The parts that are in green might be synchronous opportunities that a student could participate in. These would be optional. These could include the morning meeting or classroom meeting wherever it's placed in the day. These could include small group instruction. These could include opportunities to connect with special areas. The other places allow families to have choice and flexibility so that depending on the home demands, home technology access, home availability of a parent or adult, especially for the youngest learners, families can both select the time that they would like students to work. They can also select the degree. What we've had some conversation around is highlighting what we're calling core essentials. So when we consider the standard-based skills that students will need by the end of the year, those areas, teachers are using language like essential skills, and other areas are extensions. And these extensions or choice areas help students expand and practice. But for families who are struggling to find the time, especially if a student needs additional support, this gives them the flexibility and the information to know which is the priority. And we're hoping that that helps families as they're trying to navigate this along with us. So one of the most essential things is that use, we started out in our very beginning using language like required and optional, or must-dos and may-dos, and we shifted to core essentials to help families and students navigate those instructional priorities. We've provided some suggested time recommendations that would have been in that previous slide where we mapped out what a student day could look like. But we have in here some recommendations for times for K-2 students, about 30 minutes for required assignment, about 30 minutes for choice extension or engagement. This can include opportunities that are online, digital, or opportunities that are unplugged and allow students different ways to share information. One of the challenges that we have in our in translating a K-5 program into a digital platform is that the core resources were not digital originally. So when we think of things like guided reading and the core elements of a literacy block, these are things that we're trying to create as we move forward. And one of the most challenging things in the teacher's creation of both lessons and assignments is we don't have that visual feedback from students. In a classroom, teachers can see student understanding, student participation, student engagement. And in this virtual environment, teachers can't see that. So these estimates that we're providing, teachers are trying to provide for families. And that partnership with families, we really rely on parents and guardians to let teachers know when this took my child too long. And we've given some guidance in the family resources to say, at that point, stop if something is too challenging. But we also need to hear from parents when something is not engaging enough or not challenging enough. For as many parents as are struggling with the synchronous is too much, this is a lot to navigate, and they're struggling with managing this at home, there are some families who would like more. So this really is, after our first 5 days, we're walking that fine line, that balance of trying to meet a wide range of needs. And we really encourage parents to communicate with teachers and just help us know what is right for your child, and there isn't a one size fits all. So we're trying to provide adequate resources for all students, and we hope that over time, as we grow with the digital resources and some of the core program resources, that we're going to get better at this day by day, but a lot of that is going to be in partnership with parents. So the 3 to 5 recommendations are about twice K to 2. Again, literacy activities here can include a lot of things that are unplugged, opportunities for reading, writing, speaking. The math, we have supportive technology, Dreambox, and 5th grade Exact Path. And teachers are trying to provide a lot of enrichment and extension opportunities for students. These might include problem-based learning, projects, things that allow students to develop and apply skills, but in ways that are independently paced. Additionally, STEM activities are provided. Part of the elementary experience when students are in school is to help children really learn to love learning. And trying to maintain that here, we're trying to be cautious with, a student needs to be doing X amount of work for X amount of time. We want the skill development and we want the love of learning. So trying to make sure that we're developing curiosity and stamina for engaging in problem solving and learning activities. This is going to be something that is part of our foundational work as we move forward. And principals are working to revise schedules so that these synchronous opportunities are easier for families to participate in. And these types of learning opportunities, we look forward to seeing students engage in. Special areas and specialists have been just providing some wonderful opportunities for students, both individual opportunities, synchronous opportunities. There's, band even. They're really excited to be connected and engaging with students again. And we just look forward to how that can grow over time as we get better with managing all of the digital platforms we're working through right now.
Thank you, Dr. Gaudioso. As we transition to looking a little bit at what our secondary program is going to look like, I just want to kind of acknowledge some of the tension between trying to recreate an actual student day and find somewhere in between that and just an asynchronous experience where there's a bunch of work and provided for students that they could do at their own time, and trying to find that healthy balance. And we're not there yet, but we, I think, are trying to find that kind of sweet spot in between where we can continue to provide opportunities for synchronous connection. And I do want to focus on that as well. It's not just synchronous instruction time, well that's certainly valuable, but those synchronous connections where students can just kind of experience what school a little bit more of a step closer towards normalcy, of interacting with peers, of having some debate and discussion with teachers, of connecting with their classmates. And so we're trying to find that general kind of sweet spot for that. So we structured the secondary days, and this happens to be the high school schedule, but the middle school schedule looks similar to this, in that we are sticking with the letter days currently. That was, our students are used to that. And we've carved the beginning of the day time at 7:30 to 8:15 as staff collaboration time. One thing that we've consistently heard from staff is we can't meet enough. Like they typically want collaboration time during the normal school year. That's certainly been heightened through this experience, because I think they need the opportunity to share resources and share what's working and learn from one another. And that's been really important. So we want to carve that time out daily at the beginning of the day. That also is time for IEP meetings to be held. And we continue that IEP and 504 meetings in a way that wouldn't take instructional staff or students from other synchronous opportunities. And so we initially started calling these times office hours at the beginning, and then have been ramping up recently with, beginning last week with, the week before break, I should say, with synchronous instruction time. So if you look at that block at 8:15 to 10:15, if I'm a math teacher at the high school, I could teach 5 classes and have 120 students in those 5 classes. And so there's not an expectation in that 2 hours that all 120 of my students are receiving math synchronous instruction. But during that time, we know that the student time could be dedicated to only their math teacher connecting with them. So it could be the math specialist working with a small group of students. It could be math teacher connecting with one of his or her classes for 20 minutes, or a small subgroup of students during that time. So the students may have these 3 blocks a day of synchronous opportunities, but rarely are they going to have 6 straight hours of synchronous instruction. That shouldn't happen, and even if it were to happen, there would be optionality for students to not fully engage. We do stand by the synchronous being optional. There are just too many factors in the home that we don't want to require that time for student availability, device availability, students having to help their siblings if necessary. And we're balancing that with encouraging as many synchronous chances to connect as we can. We do think that will be most beneficial for students, and it's the most direct instruction they can receive in this venue. So this we put together as a sample student day. Again, this we want to help students have the tools to help plan their day. So we're trying to communicate with students at the beginning of the week what the week could look like, what opportunities they could have, and encourage them to think through and try to plan what a day should look like. It could look like for them. So you can see, like in this student's day, they could have math on one day. The following day, they could have English during that 8:15 block, and then a different subject area during that 10:15 block. And we encourage students to schedule in lunch for themselves, schedule in breaks for themselves, and connect for their asynchronous learning at more flexible times. We have provided some guidelines for instruction that we like to target the area of around 30 minutes per course at the high school level. That includes it's 30 minutes times the 5 major courses, I guess, at the middle school level, and 30 minutes for each course at the high school level. So as you know, at the high school schedule, the students would be scheduled for 8 courses, but they wouldn't all meet on a normal day. So that's somewhat of the rationale for the way we set up the schedule that allows disciplines to meet with their students at various times. But we are encouraging students to make plans. We have support teachers working with students to help them plan their days. Also, if that's a need for students, and just are constantly trying to provide some resources for them to help them plan and manage their own unique challenges in their day. This is just a sample of a weekly organizer we provided for students, and, as a means to try to help them plan. This one small tool, but there are certainly others. As we transition to secondary grading, we know that that the grading, that the grading aspect of this, especially at the high school level, has raised questions. Students want those answers. How we chose to approach this is when we were entered in the closure, we assembled a team that had already been established. We have a grading practices subcommittee of our strategic plan that's been looking. That's one of our focus explorations for this strategic plan, is to make some recommendations for how we could and should change grading practices that align with best practices and research moving forward for our regular program. This was an opportunity to for the research and that team that has done their homework, so to speak. That team was asked to assemble. Jason Lively is our secondary STEM supervisor, has chaired that committee throughout the year, and chaired this subcommittee. But we had received input from a lot of teachers, chairs, principals, the rest of the curriculum team. We talked through the options for this. And really, when thinking about how it makes sense to best grade, and the articles and support from research has come out since then has certainly underscored this. Is when you can, during this closure, transition to devaluing some of the grade. I don't mean devaluing it because it's not important. Just from an equity standpoint and from an accuracy of measuring learning perspective, shifting to a pass-fail mode seems to make the most sense for students. And we did that at the middle school level. We're going to transition to pass-fail for the third quarter. The third marking period hadn't yet ended when we went into closure. And so third quarter and fourth quarter at the middle school will be pass-fail grades for the course, and their end of the year course at the middle school will be pass-fail. At the high school level, enough of the third quarter had been completed that we opted to continue with the traditional letter grade the third quarter. So with that high school grade, a student would have the first, second, and third quarter grades in the book, so to speak, as well as a midterm grade. So they'd have almost 70% of how we normally would calculate their high school final year grade already completed in the traditional form. And we are opting with a pass-fail option, a pass-fail model for the fourth quarter for students. And there still will be a final grade that will be issued for the course. So the student's transcript won't look any different than what it had looked in the past. It would look at, there hadn't been a closure. Our transcripts, we only report a single grade for a course at the high school level. And our teachers have been working with their students the whole year. So they know their students, they know their grading trend, they know the books, the grades that they have in the book. And we always allow a level of teacher discretion for grading, and that would be maintained. We're going to transition just to some final supports that we have in place, and then take questions. Some of our supports for teachers is Mr. Copeland talked about a pulse survey that went out last Friday. Gave us a lot of good information that we'll continue to respond to. We built in collaboration time for them. We have ongoing professional learning. So what we've had is a lot of our more tech savvy folks and our instructional technology staff have been offering optional sessions for staff to join on an ongoing basis through this process for just getting a quick session on how to post a video, a quick session on how to use some of the tools in Blackboard more effectively. We've had a lot of instructional support and technology support on both ends. And we've also provided an extensive guide for our staff. It's around 30 pages of guidance on how to handle different aspects of the flexible instructional program. For families, you heard from Mr. Marta about some of the supports that we have in place, but please know that all of our specialists and supports are available to help families. Our social workers, counselors, psychologists, nurses are all working as diligently as ever and connecting with families and assessing the needs of our families. We provided a framework in writing for a guide for families that's available on our website. It was shared with families just to give them, our families, a little bit of sense of explanation of how the logistics of our program work. We have tech support available for families, as I mentioned, so kids, parents can contact tech support for that type of support. And we will be sending out a family community pulse survey this Friday, similar to what we did for our staff, to get a sense of what our families need to help them manage this better and help support them in transitioning in a way that makes sense. And we will be as responsive as possible to that survey to help us guide our future programming. This is just a snapshot of what the guide for families looks like. That's on the website and available for staff. And finally, we've just been, from the beginning, preaching and pleading flexibility and empathy, compassion and understanding for one another. Certainly, our teachers need that through this time, and our families are going through so many unique challenges that we always have to be understanding and compassionate through that. So we just appreciate everyone's flexibility through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Thank all of all of you for your support and your hard work and due diligence. Anyone who said, geez, working at home must be a lot of fun, doesn't say that too much anymore. Dr. Gilbert?
I just thank you, Dr. Eveslag, and all the people, the members of the cabinet, people who spoke this evening. I know that this was just a tremendous amount of work that is going into what you all are doing, and it's actually just it's incredible. I mean, it really, I think it's really just hard to imagine. I mean, educational institutions are not always the easiest to turn around, and all of a sudden, you know, with a few days' notice, we've just completely shifted the instructional model. It's actually incredible, the work that's needed to be able to do this. So I think we really appreciate that, and I appreciate the fact that sort of the flexibility and compassion are underlying all of this. At this time, I'm going to call on people, or maybe Ms. LaPera is going to call on people. I see both Shayna and Lucy with their hands up.
I'll go ahead and take over that part if you want.
Thank you. That would be wonderful.
Okay. Yep, I'm going to unmute Shayna.
Hi, I just had a quick question. It wasn't really a question, just wanted to reiterate something, Dr. Eveslag, that we talked about in the curriculum committee about just to sort of clarify for the students and families in high school and how this third quarter grade is going to be calculated, and just wanted to reiterate, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this work at home period during the third quarter can only serve to improve a student's grade and not lower it during this sort of tumult.
Well, that's close to accurate. There is the possibility that if a student was engaged and chose to do nothing, it could slightly lower their grade. We did weight the fourth quarter and the culminating project, which would replace the final exam, at only 5% each of their total grade. But the chances of a student that is engaged lowering their grade is almost, if they're engaged, they're going to raise their grade. I think the idea behind the value of the weighting is just about, you know, kind of assessing how accurately we can truly measure a student's performance and evaluate that performance as far as what they were learned in this setting. But we anticipate that this will help students grade far more.
Trying to balance.
Go ahead. I was just going to say that I forgot to mention that I normally do, that this was the subject of a long curriculum committee meeting that I know everybody had the people who were there had an opportunity to discuss. I forgot to mention that.
I was going to say one of the complexities around grading is it's a long-standing part of public and private education, and it's not necessarily one of the better things, because if the kid is doing their work for the grade as opposed to for the learning, that can get the grade can get in the way. We certainly the strategic plan has been looking, as Scott said, over the last 5 years for how do we recognize learning besides just giving a grade. Having said that, we don't want students to not at least explore the possibility of doing some of the work that the teachers are designing for them. There's been a couple of articles written already about what this situation in schools has done is really exasperated the issue of who's got resources at home and who doesn't have resources at home. And so what the administration is trying to do is trying to balance that so that it's not devastating for people who have a difficult time. Parents are working. We've got high school kids whose parents are working and they're at home with their younger sibling, and it's tough for them to be able to get to the synchronous sessions and so forth and so on. So all of that is part of the balance with the grading.
Okay, next we have Lucy Klein.
Hi, thank you. I want to thank everyone for all of the work that has gone towards this remote learning. I know that it's been a lot, and especially around, I'm appreciative of the work around trying to not normalize, but do as much as we can for the seniors. And I wanted to ask, I know a letter went out to the seniors today, at least from Heriton, and that there's a specific way for the students if they had ideas on, things that they could do towards the end of the school year. What would be the best way for parents or other community members if they had ideas around a virtual graduation or something like that? What would be the best way to share that information? Would that be emailing the principals, or is there another opportunity to do that?
They can email the principals, but I know the principals are reaching out to the HSAs specifically and asking them to get involved in getting some ideas from people. But certainly anybody can go right to the principal.
Great, thank you.
Are there any other questions from the board? Okay, Dr. Gilbert, do you want me to ask Mr. Roos if he has any public comment now?
You can do that. I was going to do that, but you're more than welcome to.
Okay, hold on. Let me unmute him. There we go. There we go.
Good evening. There's one public comment. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I will read the name and where in the township the individual lives, and then I'll just read the comment as written. The comment comes from John Willis of Ardmore, and his comments as follows. I will be attending the meetings tonight, but I thought it would be better if I emailed one of my questions beforehand. You may not have time for it tonight, which is fine, but at least I can get it out there. I have been interested in distance learning for many years. I've wondered how high schools and colleges will look in 10 years if distance learning catches on. If so, what will be the benefits, if any? I was debating this with a professor at Ursinus and my engineering major son, who is in his final year at Penn State, and I have seen all the distance learning emails directed to my daughter, who is at Heriton. So I was wondering whether Lmsb, having been compelled to implement distance learning for most of the second half of this school year, has considered surveying or focus grouping students and teachers about their experiences with distance learning for future education or curriculum planning. If not, should it? I would think there could be a lot of useful data here which should be mined for analysis, don't you think? If so, I would think Lower Merion School District should consider addressing this before the school year ends when the data becomes stale. Thanks.
So there's an old axiom in administration: never let a crisis go by without making use of it. We've got a pretty good crisis going here. Certainly there are aspects of this that I think would shed a positive light on our strategic plan, the use of technology. I'm really fascinated by the teacher collaboration, which this has really heightened, where teachers, as has been mentioned, are really coming up with some creative ways in which to engage students, and we certainly want to capitalize on that. As we said, we did do a pulse survey this past week. We're doing one for parents. Particularly the secondary principals are having conversations with students. I think we'll capture this. This is as close to fixing the plane while it's in flight as we can imagine. But we will take whatever we can from this and make the best of it going forward.
Thank you very much for the comment, sir. At this time, I'm just going to read the upcoming meeting dates. So we have a number of meetings coming up. We're going to have a Facilities and Purchasing Committee meeting on April 16th at 8:30 a.m., a regular Business Board meeting April 20th at 8 p.m., Finance Committee meeting where we're going to be reviewing the student survey Services budget on April 22nd at 8:30 a.m. and another Finance Committee meeting where we will be reviewing the staffing and IT budget at on April 29th at 8:30 a.m. I think those are all the meetings. Is that correct, Ms. LaPera?
That's
So,
correct.
you'll be able to find information on board docs as to how to connect to these meetings, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, great. So we appreciate everyone who's been listening, and I hope that everybody stays safe and healthy. And with that, we are adjourned. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.